Hello, today I will speak about solo polyamory and where you are with having a relationship with other people, but you are it from yourself as an individual, not from a group or a dyad, a couple-based point of view. There's many people who's wondering, can you be with no partners? Can you be single and still be polyamorous? And yes, you can be single and polyamorous. Let me just tell you this little story. It's George and Harry and Lisa. Now, George and Harry are in relationship with each other. They are having a homosexual relationship, and Lisa, she's in love with George. So the moment that George and Harry break up, she's going, yippee! Finally! Now! George is not homosexual anymore. He is single. And that's not exactly the way it works. Instead of thinking of being polyamorous as a sexual direction or a sexual status, you might think of it as a relational status, or yeah. So think of it more in that sense. So whether you are 1, 2 or 3 does not really say whether you are polyamorous or not, because you can be with more relations and still basically be monogamous. So first, before I get to the point about what solo polyamory is, I'll just have a few words about primaries and secondaries and tertiaries, and this way of ranking the relationships. So first you have the primaries, where you have this is the person that you have in your house and your car and your project and your baby. This is sort of goes into the primary, or the most important department. And then you have the secondary, which is, let me just define the tertiary and then go back to the secondary, because it's often more easy that way. Tertiary is somebody you have a relationship with, but you don't meet that often. It could be once a month, it could be twice a year, it could be once a week, but it's not that often. But it's more than a one-night stand. It could be somebody that you had a relationship with, but you ended it maybe 10 years ago, but still you see that we are important to each other and I'd like to meet, but not that often. And you have not so much a commitment outside of the meeting. Well, the secondary is sort of between the two, and it's hard to define. One way I'm looking at it is like you have an apple. So you have the skin, and you have the seeds, and then you have the sort of the fruit meat, or the pulp, or the what's between the seeds and the skin. So if a tertiary relationship, it's the skin and the seeds. That's sort of the idea that somebody you want to build something with are the primary, and then the secondary can be all the way from this to that. It's not easy, but this is just ways to try to put some words into things into words. And a lot of people don't like it, and I can agree with that. If you try to do everything with this primary, secondary, tertiary tool, you are going to wind up in problems, because they don't really talk about how emotionally you are involved with somebody. Another way of dividing relationships is to put them into anchor relationships That's sort of things, relationships where you have things which actually connect you physically, and sort of, this is, well, anchors you. And then you can think of the other relationships as balloons, things that makes you stretch, or so these are ways of thinking. And I'm trying to sum it up now. You can have more primaries. You can have 2 primaries. You can have a car with that one, and a baby with that one, and you can even have a house with a 3rd one. You can have more secondaries. More relationships where there is no really project, but you are seeing each other very often or very intensely. So you can have several secondaries, and you can have, of course, many tertiaries. Again, this is not one-night stands. So again, having a primary relationship is not the same as having a primary partner. And a secondary relationship might be more important emotionally than with a primary partner. And a tertiary partner is not the same as a one-night stand or whatever. So for a lot of people, I'm just saying, if this is the moment you want to scream, now is a good time. If this is confusing, if this is a mess, I will just hold my ears for a little while and allow you to scream, and then we'll continue. So please scream. Okay. When we're moving into solo polyamory, which has its own challenges, then one of the important things is that when I'm looking at it from solo polyamory point of view, I don't like particularly the words primary and secondary and that. I like every relationship to be unique and be what it is. Some solo polyamory people, they joke and say that they're their own primary. So if they're having babies with children, they are taking care of it. They're not necessarily sharing that with somebody else. Or if they have a car, or if they have the house, they are sort of taking responsibility for themselves. There's even people who's making a vow to themselves and say, I shall be faithful to me until the day that death do me. Yeah. One thing that is important looking at solo polyamory relationship is that in most relationships you have what you could call a relationship escalator. So you meet, and then you decide to move in together, and then you decide to get a dog or a car, and then you decide to marry, and then you decide to get a baby, and then you decide to live happily ever after, and all that. So in solo polyamory, the marriage or this building up or whatever is not the goal. It is to make the relationship in a way stay the way it is, and not just build up towards that we're going to spend all this time together. Or so after having spent some time looking at solo polyamory and realizing that it's more of my life now than it was before, and still not understanding everything and still not having the right words for it, I'm saying a watch is not the same as time, but it is something that we can use to measure time. And if I'm taking that picture a little bit further, what we call our relationship is not the same as our relationships. So give them the names that's working for you. It might be helpful to say that, ah, this looks more like that and this looks more like that, but again, these are just like frames to look at our relationships with. So what I would like to do now is ask the questions that you might have to look at as homework. So, are you a solo poly? Or are you a coupler-oriented poly? Or a triad-oriented poly? What is your love style, if I can use that word? And what is your relationship style? Can you describe it? I'll end this one about solo polyamory with a poem. And it might be a bit contradictory, but love is a choice, and love is what it is. Not one specific number, be it 1, 2 or 3, more or even none. Love is what it is. Love is a choice.